Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries Resilience Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, DB, and I have a special guest, Travis Hearne, with me today. How you doing, Travis?
I'm good, EB, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for being here. Travis, Titanium Consulting Group, leadership coaching, organizational change coaching, doing some writing now. Also, Marine Corps veteran, husband, father, son, brother. A lot of stuff I gleaned from the book, so thanks for that. And that's actually one of the things that I wanted to reach out and connect with you about was the book, Through the Storm, The Path to Becoming a Resilient Leader. And man, what a gem that I found in this. And just thank you so much for that. One of my things, I'm big on reading books. I believe leaders are readers. And this one, just in line with, becoming more resilient, I thought was just a wonderful piece of work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man. No, thank you for reading it. It was a passion project that took me 10 years to learn and like about a year and a half to write. So the books. I've been getting some really cool feedback from it. Just like what you said, people are really are digging into it, and they're really pulling out tangible things that can help them be better people. And it's
Mm,
just that's all you can ask when you're writing a book, is that it actually impacts someone's life. It's not just going to sit on someone's coffee table, and
yeah.
it's just cool to see that feedback.
One of the things that I often talk about here is healthy employees creating healthy organizations. So it sounds like that's some of the work that you're really trying to emphasize with Titanium. And can you tell me more about Titanium?
Yeah, man. So we're a conglomerate of mostly military dudes. I have some SEALs, Navy SEALs in there that I've been working with, but I don't hold that too closely against them. They're awesome people too. But so that's what we do. We help transform organizations from the inside out, and kind of try to take out that transactional piece that a lot of organizations use to, and it really does hold them back from being transformational and from changing. So we help clients, customers, executives, organizations, companies really take a step back and look at their organizations and their people and see, okay, am I leading my people in a way that they are growing? That because if our, like you just said, if our employees are growing, our company's going to grow. If we're taking care of our employees, they're going to take care of us. It's kind of like in the military, you take care of your people, they'll take care of the mission. So that's kind of the philosophy for Titanium Consulting Group. And we've seen some phenomenal change. We've gone into some rough situations and have come out on the other side with companies, organizations, people that are really living holistically healthy lives. And when I say holistically healthy, we have 5 pillars of our kind of how we coach and how we consult within Titanium Consulting Group. It's going to be the holistically healthy leader, the holistically healthy organization is healthy mentally, emotionally, financially, which is the business, and then spiritually, and say mentally, emotionally, oh yeah, and physically. So physical healthy leaders are also better leaders. So we put the physical aspect into that as well. So we go in and we help leaders to really pull out the best that's already in themselves and in their people.
Wow. Love that idea of just a holistic healthiness to it. It's like all the legs of the chair. I'm sure you've come across some of the chaos through businesses, helping them. One of the lines that I appreciated a lot in the book was when you talked about recognizing that through chaos or crisis, but also success.
Hmm.
Can you talk to me about chaos and success?
Yeah. And it's kind of a story that we've seen. It's a use case that we've seen in a couple different companies that have grown really, really quickly. And through the chaos of growth, and the chaos that comes with just like building companies, building organizations, building up people, and sometimes it can move really quickly, especially nowadays. These kind of companies can grow to a point where they're like, oh man, okay, now I have employees, now I have this, that, and the other, and they're not necessarily ready for that. So when they reach a certain level of success, it's just like they've made it. Like, I'm good, there's nothing else I need to do. They can get into this complacency mindset where it's like, okay, we had that success, man. Let's move on to the next thing, but let's do the exact same thing that we did before, so we can be successful again. And when I talk about it in the book, it's just like when you are successful. I talk about a deployment I had in Afghanistan where we were able to come home, or Iraq, when we came home with all of our Marines. That was a success for us, was coming home with all of our Marines.
Sure, absolutely.
And what happened to some of us, it was like, okay, we got home and it's like, okay, now we're gearing up for Afghanistan. Let's try to figure out how we can do the same thing over and over again, make it repeatable and some of that is okay. But we're looking at Afghanistan and it's a completely different beast. And we have to be able to reset and be able to look at things through a different lens to be able to be successful again in a different way. And that is how organizations grow, if they can identify kind of how they were successful, what success looked like for that moment, for that mission, for that goal that they hit, whatever that looks like. And they can kind of do an after action and be like, okay, here's what went well, here's what didn't go well, here's what we need to do differently, and move into the next phase of planning and celebrate the success, but move into the next stage of planning in a healthy way. That's okay. What are we not thinking of? How can we do this differently? As if they're kind of starting over after they've celebrated the success, because that's also an important part of celebrating success,
Sure.
celebrating people, making sure that they understand that they played an important part in the success of whatever they were doing, but not staying there, moving on and strategizing on how you do things differently next time.
Yeah. And how quick was that turnaround from Iraq to Afghanistan? Was that a
It was eight
pretty
months.
rapid?
Yeah.
How long?
8 months. So we got
Wow.
home.
Okay.
We got home 2009. We got home in 2009, sometime springtime 2009, and we were out the door by early 2010. So it was a quick turnaround.
And for those who are not familiar with rotations of deployments, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, usually you get like a year. Usually you're home for like they have the dwell time for like a year where you can get home, you're retraining, you're doing it's just but and when we were on our way to Afghanistan, we weren't even sure if we were taking everybody. Super fluid. It was just like, okay, we know we're going to Afghanistan, but we think we may only be able to take half the battalion. Just a bunch of unknown and uncertainty, and then just kind of all of a sudden it was just we were ready to go. In 2010, we took off for Afghanistan. So yeah, 8 months was quick. We had to train
Yeah.
and we had to do a lot of things and plan and do and just get out the door and pretty much dragging our bags with us.
Goodness gracious. So, and you talked about kind of shifting to a different context, a different environment. How have you seen this translated into some of more of the corporate business environments where they have to change gears, shift their mindset, shift their thinking about their own context?
Yeah, I mean, companies are changing. Man, if you look at companies nowadays and you look at companies even 10 years ago, the technological advancements that have been happening and that continue to happen are causing companies to change quickly, especially in the tech world. So when we look at companies and they're just rapidly changing and changing and they're adjusting and their goals are moving targets and layoffs happen and you have to do really hard things in order to keep your business going. I see people get burnt out a lot. I see people get, and it seems like burnout is more of a rapid process than a long drawn out, like maybe 15 years of doing the same thing. It's happening sooner because of how often things are changing nowadays, because of how much turnover and how things are moving, how fast things are moving. Burnout is happening a lot quicker these days. So when we work with companies that are constantly changing, it's very much about, well, the business is the business, and we need to make sure that you're growing at an exponential rate and all these other things. But you need to make sure that you are handling your people problems and that you are diving into who your people are. We use as a military dude, I use acronyms for everything. So another foundational tool we use is GRIT. And as a military dude, GRIT, I think everybody uses GRIT, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so when we walk with companies that are going through a lot of change, it's like, okay, like, are you focused on growth? So the G in GRIT is growth. Are you growing? You're growing your business because you have to, but are you concentrating on the growth of your people and the growth of yourself outside of whatever the bottom line or the goal is? Like, are you growing as a person? Are your people growing? How do your people want to grow? So digging in and understanding how they want to grow. R is resilience. Thick skin is a must in the business world today. You have to be able to be resilient. Like this podcast, man, that's what it's about. And like, you have to have thick skin to get through things. Like I use the buffalo as an analogy for the book for a reason, because the buffalo is the only herd animal that when a storm comes over the horizon, the buffalo will grab up its herd and it'll head straight through the storm instead of around it or away from it, because it knows if it goes through the storm, it'll get through the storm quicker than if it were to stop or run away. But the reason it's able to get through that is because it has thick skin. Just biologically, it has the thickest skin of all, and it helps them to get through the storm. So resilience, you have to have resilience as a business owner, a team leader, a team member, whatever that looks like. And then the integrity piece is a huge thing. Like when you're changing and when you're doing things rapidly, or when things are happening that you don't want to happen in your business, being a person and being an organization of integrity is a non-negotiable. Without your integrity, you have nothing. And we learned that in the military. Like, your integrity is all you have. If you lose it, that's a problem. And then transformation, we talked about that earlier, like transformation, if you're not looking to transform your organization and transform yourself, then you're going to stay the same. Like your people are going to stay the same. If you don't have transformation in mind, then you're going to get surpassed, and all of a sudden you're going to be, your company's going to become irrelevant, and all of a sudden you're going to be in the same space you were. So always looking for opportunities to transform yourself, your business, and your people towards your goals, whether those are business, whether that's health, whether that's mental, emotional, whether that's those pillars of holistic health that we talked about.
Yeah.
How are you transforming towards those? So that's kind of how we work with companies that are rapidly changing and succeeding really well, but changing all nonetheless.
And I love that grit is in the book. I don't want to give too much away of the book because I want people to buy it and read it as well. But I love the idea that you were weaving in and out trust kind of throughout all of those, and just how that was kind of, I felt like that was kind of the glue that kind of connected growth to resilience, to integrity, to transformation. You have to have trust. And you talked about culture and the necessity of trust in the book. Was that something you learned from not seeing trust, or the benefits of seeing trust? How did
Man, it
trust
came,
stick out to?
yeah, man, it came from me breaking the, like a lot. It came from a lot of different places. Like without trust, like without, if your team doesn't trust you, you can't go through anything with them. It's just if you breach trust and integrity, then you've rocked the foundation of an organization and a team. And I found that out the hard way. In the book, I talk about how I led my Marines in a horrible way after the death of one of my really good friends in Afghanistan, and I broke their trust in a really deep way. Just a brief story, and if you
That was
really want the deep story, go buy the book.
yeah. This is
Um,
Jacob, right? This
Jacob, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I have this for, and yeah, so Jacob Light was he's one of my heroes, man. And he got to our battalion after we were about to go to Afghanistan, but he had been injured in Iraq 2 years before and clawed his way to get back to a deployable unit. That's just kind of, that's the Marine that he was. He was a Marine. He wanted to be with his Marines. That's who he was. And when he got to the battalion, our battalion went out to the beach like Marines do. We engaged in a giant ground fighting game where we just lined up against each other and tried to choke each other out. And I got in front of Jake. The first time I met Jake, I thought I was going to absolutely dominate this kid. He's probably 6'4". He's tall. He's lanky. I'm like, I got this kid. I had no idea who he was at the time. So on the count of go, we're supposed to go after the guy in front of us. And I went after Jake. And like I say in the book, like, man, like 8 seconds later, my eyes start to blink and I'm looking at blue skies. And I got two Marines dragging me back to the edge of the circle because Jake just tapped me out in seconds. Just he had no problem with me. And then I was like, man, I got to figure out who this guy is. After that, I kind of globbed onto him. And I was like, man, just teach me what you've been through a lot. Let me just learn from you. How do you lead your Marines in this way, that way? So we learned how to lead our Marines together. And then in Afghanistan, did the same kind of thing for my birthday, May 20th. He got me a cake, and it was an MRE cake, a meal ready cake. And EB, you know what those taste like. They're not great anyway, but to make it worse, he took mustard and he put a big 27 on it as I was turning 27. So he made it even more inedible, but I ate it anyway, just to spite him. So I eat the cake, and literally hours later, we go back out on this mission. We come, and about 3 days into it, we're beaten, and we kind of got some vehicle problems, and it's just like we need to go back into base to get everything fixed, to get food, to kind of rest, refit, and get everything done. As we're pulling in, an explosion happens that we hear, and long story short, turns out that Jake had been killed by an IED that day. Him and a couple other Marines were injured. So instead, and this gets back to the trust issue, this is when I kind of went off the rails, man. I went into this mode of vengeance, and I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care if my Marines ate. I didn't care if they slept. I didn't care what happened. We were going to figure out who put that IED in. We were going to figure out what happened no matter what. And I ran my Marines into the dirt, and I totally broke their trust to the point where I got pulled off, to the point where my staff sergeant was like, you're benched. Like, your Marines are taken away from you. You need to sit down. You need to grieve. Went to the chaplain for about a week to kind of process through all that stuff and understand. He was like, man, first thing you got to do is go back and you need to apologize to your team. You broke their trust. Like, they look to you to literally keep them alive, and you almost did the opposite. So you need to go reestablish and build that trust back with them. So that was a longer story, but like without trust, man, it's there's really nothing you can do as a leader if your people don't trust you. In a combat situation, in a business situation, if you're leading someone through like a year-long goal, and like and they don't trust you to help them to get there, then what do you have as a leader? You don't have the confidence of your team. So if trust leads to confidence, leads to conflict, leads to a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. How much of, well, first, thanks for sharing that story. That's really powerful, and I was drawn to that in the book as well. But how much have you seen organizational leaders, you're just like, man, you just need to grieve, whether they lost a big financial gain, they lost a status in their industry? It seems like a lot of that is just, hey, the way you get through this is first, you're going to grieve, then you're going to go apologize to your team.
Yep.
That track with
Oh, that was the process, man. And that's the process I see so often. And people don't understand that the grieving process isn't just because someone died, or it's not something that's like a traumatically like sad event. People grieve positive things. Like I think the grieving
change.
process is
Yeah.
change. Yes.
Yeah.
People grieve change. Like when they switch jobs, there's a grieving process that has to happen. Like of that other job, even though it may be like a promotion or a great thing, there's different things that you have to be able to process through in a kind of a grieving sort of way. And if you can do that in a healthy way, then you move on to the next stage, whatever next stage that may be, in the most healthy way that you can. And we look at leaders that want to jump into the next thing, or they want to, they're ready to, they're trying to move so quickly that they forget that there were some things that happened in the past that that are going to go one of two ways. If they are able to internally process them and recognize some of those things, those lessons learned, those hard times, those challenges that they had to go through in their whether it's a previous role, previous position, it's previous company, whatever that looks like, and learn from those things. If they do that, if they learn well, they can move into this next area of their life, this next challenge, this next journey in a way that they're fully ready to do. A lot of leaders, when they jump into these other things and they don't take time to learn from or grieve from the processes of the past, they feel overwhelmed and ill-equipped to be able to lead, to change, to do really much of anything, because they haven't really coped with a lot of the things that happened in that other role, no matter what that was.
I,
Yeah.
I've often kind of defined resilience here on the podcast as bouncing back from adversity, but also learning from it in the process. And I know you have a definition of resilience that we'll get to as well. But I just wanted to touch on that and the grieving aspect of change. Let's say I drive a rust bucket, which I do, just a commuter back and forth to work, right? If someone was to hand me the keys to the newest, Lamborghini or Ferrari or Porsche or whatever, that grieving process is going to be pretty quick. As I see the grieving process as your ability to get to a place of acceptance.
Yes.
Right. And that's one of the things that I'm hearing is it's easy to get to a place of acceptance if things are going well, and just the inability to just acknowledge. And I love that you said at the beginning, like, you got to celebrate success. You have to take those moments. And I think that's really what kind of caps off that I'm at a place of acceptance that this is where we are now and we can move forward. And what a great foundation for the G, right? And grit, and just that growth aspect to it. I wanted
a
to
lot
talk.
of times, one real quick thing, like a lot of times we think that success or whatever like is linear. We think that like once we get there, then we're good. Like from point A to point B, and point B is success, or point B is like where I've achieved my goal. When in reality, it's cyclical. It is a cycle that will continue to keep rolling as long as you are in your profession, as long as we're living, like that cyclical way that we live. It's, it starts out with whatever you start, and then you move through some processes, and then you're going to have some downs, and then you're going to finally get some ups, and you're going to get some coaching, and you're going to end up at success. But that doesn't mean that that's the end state. It means you just start back over. So that's what I say. Like when we talk about that, it's just like we need to be able to understand and learn from our past in order to be successful in the future.
I like that a lot because it's so easy to think milestone, milestone, milestone. It's a progression, but the ability is like, okay, there might be different levels or different aspects to where we're at and different things. So with the business versus the mental versus the emotional, those aren't always going to be at the same level of healthiness in the organization. How do you coach that?
Yeah, and that's the coaching tool. The initial assessment is, okay, let's look at these 5 pillars of your business and your life. Mm-hmm. Where are you on a scale of because somebody's business health may, and this we run into this a lot. Someone's business health may be off the charts. They may be like, they're scaling, they're successful, they're in their business, but their emotional and their mental health are way down here.
Mm.
And so when we take when we do our vulnerability assessments and we like and figure out how holistically healthy they are, okay, like your business is awesome, but when you go home at night, you can't have a conversation with your husband, your wife, your kids. You were just mentally and emotionally done. So what we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on those pillars that need the most work. So we're going to focus on your mental and emotional health. And what we've seen is a lot of the times it may like they start to slowly balance out. We never get to, like I said, I just said, like it's not a linear thing. You never get to 100% on all these things. There's always work that needs to be done within all of those pillars. But if we can increase those exponentially, especially those mental, physical, and emotional health buckets, then like I said, man, I've seen it time and time again. That business side of the equation may stall out for a short time while you work on this other stuff, but it's a short time, and you will see that start to grow, and your other things will stay, and it just makes you and your organization just a holistically healthy beast. And we have different modalities and different things that we talk about, and that we walk people through when it comes to how to increase those different pillars. But once we start seeing those increase, man, it's people just take off.
And I was reading about the denying, blaming, taking no action. Can you talk more about that?
That was in the context of failure. When you think about failure, a lot of times leaders, the first time when you get that gut punch of like, hey, you screwed this up, it's like, well, they start pointing fingers. It's like, it wasn't really me. It was all these different things. I like, it's a denial of taking ownership of what you did and your part in the failure. Jocko Willink's book, like Extreme Ownership, talks about this quite a bit about you take ownership of what you do. And I kind of unpacked it a little bit further. And when we start to get into that denial and that reflecting phase, because that's the initial, like once that happens, that's your initial, like you get hit in the mouth and all of a sudden you're like, well, why they did this, that, and the other. And the second phase is really kind of like accepting and figuring out what you did. But there's a difference between taking responsibility and taking ownership in that place. And I talk about that in the book. And like taking responsibility is kind of the first step. Yep. Okay. This happened. I tell this to my kids, like, what do you say when you're sorry? I say, I'm sorry for, do you forgive me? What can I do to make it better? That's kind of like taking responsibility. And taking ownership is that piece of like, okay, I own this. Now it is my turn to make it, to fix it, to make it better. And I say fix it in a way like you can't go back and you can't always fix something you did wrong. You can't reshape something and reshape the past and change it back into what you originally thought it could be. But you can make that situation better by taking ownership, by not deflecting and blaming and pointing at other people, and really moving forward in a healthy way. When you take inventory, you grieve the process of the failure, and then you understand it, you move forward and take ownership of it, and you take action. You have to take action. All those other things are nothing if you don't take action on what that means. So that's kind of when I talk about those different steps of failure. The beginning phase is always to point at other people.
I've seen a lot of leadership, unfortunately, rooted in insecurity and an inability to take responsibility as that initial step. We kind of touch back on that grieving aspect of it. I feel like I have this ongoing dialogue of you don't really move on, you just learn how to live with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that it becomes identity shaping, is like I have to live with the fact that happened. How much have you encountered conversations with leaders of they're not making the jump from what happened to, hey, that's a part of who we are now?
We run into that a lot fiscal years are awesome. They're good metrics for businesses and organizations to look at to be able to be successful. But a lot of times, and what I kind of help remind leaders and CEOs, executives is like, hey, look at that fiscal year. Yeah, it's over. Especially salespeople, man. I was one of them. Like we hit that, like we hit our goal, we celebrate, we move on. We miss our goal, we sulk, and then we move on. But if we can, again, look back at what happened and look and like retrospectively unpack the successes, the failures, and all the different things that happened in that period, we can help people move into the next fiscal year, the next whatever goal, whatever their metric is moving forward. We can help them move into that in a way that they are understanding what happened in the past. Like you have to learn from the past. You do carry it with you no matter what happened. You still have experiences and lessons that could have been learned in that past year, that past 6 months, that past 3 months, whatever, that yesterday. you still have lessons that you can learn and carry with you into the future. And those are lessons learned of, hey, I'm never going to do this again. And it's lesson learned of, I need to replicate this and do this over and over again. But understanding those things and coming up with a plan and a strategy to be able to put those into place. I have my people, a lot of times they'll write a failure resume. So the failure resume, it's a resume of all the stuff you did wrong. And what we generate that into is literally a playbook for success. Because if you can understand things that you did wrong and unpack them and figure out how you can do that better next time, all of a sudden you have this document that it's a living, breathing thing that's like, okay, I remember this kind of scenario. It wasn't the exact one, but I can go back to this and be like, okay, here's what I said I was going to do better. And it's a reminder that because like we said earlier, business happens very, very quickly. But when that kind of situation happens again and you get hit back and you get punched in the mouth or whatever happens, you're like, okay, I know this feeling. I've got this written down and now I can move forward with this playbook.
I love that. What a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I do it all the time. And unfortunately, my failure resume is thick.
I think mine would be quite thick as well. I want to kind of cap off with resiliency. I use Kindle, so I don't have the book. I was going to hold up the book or something to see it, but I'll just put a picture up.
I got one over there.
Resiliency is understanding storms will come and using the skills you possess and the team around you through the storm. And man, the whole book, I love the way that the book just expands from the beginning of that. And I'm a big fan of defining your terms. So I love that you started with defining resilience in that way. I really do appreciate that and the book and the lessons that we can gain from there. And I didn't know about the buffalo's thick skin like that.
The reason I wanted to start with the definition up front is because people have different, like you can get 55 different definitions of what resilience is and what it means to different people. But
yeah,
the bottom line is resilience is being able to do hard stuff. And being able to and how you do resilience well is doing that with your people and being able to have support systems and different things and being able to have the grit to be able to go through hard things, because we're either in 3 stages of life. No matter what, we are either going into a storm, we're in a storm, or we're coming out of a storm. Those are the 3 phases of life.
Yeah, I can't take a train around it. Is that
no? You take a train around it, it's going to catch up to you, and that's what. And what really matters is how you prepare for each of those phases of life.
The framework there, anyone can step into one of those stages of storms. And yeah, this helps provide a guide to that. Did I see mention of a workbook in place?
Yep. I'm finishing it up this week. So the workbook is going to be an amazing accompaniment to the book. So when you to help leaders lead their teams through some of this content in a deeper and more tangible way. So it's got discussion questions. You have a failure resume that you're going to have to write. And it makes things real. And like, it's going to provide another level of context to what I mean in the book. And also it's going to help you to, come together as a team and learn some of these concepts and put them into place. The GRIT framework, the holistically healthy leadership framework, the failure resume, all these different things. So each chapter of the book we're going to go deeper into what that means. And we're going to ask some really tough questions and ask you to do some hard things. Like we're going to ask you to ask for feedback from 2 people. Like you need to be able to be able to, as a leader, ask for feedback. So, and then write those down. What did they say? What are you going to learn from this? So that it's just going to be such a good accompaniment to the book.
I love the feedback aspect. You talked about after action deployments, retrospectives in the project management world and all these things. There's supposed to be loops for feedback integrated into it, but it's so overlooked. I don't want to get off that tangent right now. Maybe a future time we'll have you back. We can talk about feedback.
Yeah, always love it.
Yeah. So how do people connect with you? What's the best way to stay up to date with you?
My social media platform is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Just if you look up Travis Hearne, I'm probably the only one there that has this face. So if you look it up, that's me. Also, drthearne.com. So drthearne.com. That's my website where you can go. It's my speaker website. You can book me to come speak. You can reach out to us as far as consulting. You can see all the different consultants that we have for Titanium Consulting Group, their backgrounds. The blog is there. The link to my podcast is there. So drthearne.com is the place that you can find all the stuff.
Those will be in the show notes as well. And
yeah,
we'll have everybody there. Yeah. So please listen, please connect, please reach out. And I appreciate your time today. Appreciate the conversation. And keep doing great things, man. Keep fighting a good fight. And we'll keep paying attention to what you got going on.
Yeah, thanks, EB, man. Thanks for having me. This is important. I looked at all your shows before this. Like, the work you're doing is important and it's impactful. And man, just encourage you, man. You're making a difference, and just keep going with it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate
Yeah.
that. All right, my friends, that was Dr. Travis Hearne, author of Through the Storm, The Path to Becoming a Resilient Leader. What a great opportunity today to learn, to grow, to develop, to be shaped by some really great insights, some really great wisdom that he was able to share today. So please connect with him, check out his website, check out his podcast. All that's going to be in the notes. And we're going to keep pushing for healthy employees and healthy organizations, whether it's a personal resilience matter or an organizational resilience matter. And just keep looking forward for more content coming out here. Please share this episode with your friends. Please, those who are eager to learn and hear from those who are taking charge and leading the way into just a healthy organization and a healthy mindset that it takes to be an efficient, resilient leader. So until next time, EB out here.